Imagine moving into a new neighborhood where within 1 or 2 years you started to feel or develop a respiratory illness such as difficulty breathing or coughing just because your neighborhood has high exposure pollution and also is located near a an industry or a power plant. Well, the question is, why move there in the first place? Well, not everyone has the wealth or privilege to do so because it traces back into history. In 1982, in North Carolina, predominantly black community protested against a planned waste landslide that were going to be located in their area. This protest brought to attention that there were other landslides that were being located in colored communities. This is what you refer to as environmental racism, where there's a disproportionate impact of environmental hazards on people of color. Some minority communities don't have the financial abilities to move out of their pollution sites, so they leave their health at risk. People were fighting for environmental issues, but they lacked the attention of environmental injustice in people of color. Some people say that the environmental racism is more concentrated on the low income communities, but as you can see, the race is more a reliable indicator of it. The environmental contaminant disproportionately burdens that the poor and the minority communities lack infrastructure, they lack nutrition, and it led to companies to take advantage of that and place their facilities within their communities because they lacked repercussions and thought that the minority communities don't have powerful political influence in their area. For example, in Flint, Michigan, they decided to move the water supply to the Flint River, which they failed to clean the new supply that they have, and it left with like 100,000 black residents to experience contaminated water that had lead and other bacteria in it, such as E. coli, and the residents complain about the foul smelling of the water, the discolor of the water, and also their skin rashes, but they were easily dismissed. The government was too slow to respond. As you can see, this is a classic pattern of what environmental racism works when there's a systemic neglect in it. Another example, likewise, is Cancer Alley. The Cancer Alley is an 85-mile from Baton Rouge to New Orleans, where there's over 150 facilities that are companies that are mainly fossil fuels and petrochemical facilities, and that they produce toxic emissions that are linked to diseases and illnesses such as cancer and other illnesses. Like, that's how Cancer Alley got its name from. And mainly these companies were mainly placed on black and poor communities in the area. They're mainly concentrated in that area. The residents also feel the same way, that they feel signs of abandonment from the elective representatives, from the industries, and even from media attention. Alongside both examples, zoning and land use laws are important for environmental justice because they affect deciding decisions in undesirable land. But these laws were mainly to protect the wider and the wealthier communities so that they can place them towards desirable more land so they can be safe from environmental issues. These discriminatory housing policies also takes place too because they were usually placed within the colored people were mainly used to place in the same neighborhood where there were undesirable land, and when companies were looking for land to use and they were looking for cheap land and large land to use, So they took advantage of the minority communities and neighborhoods to be placed there, making them feel inferior to the industries. And these industries also argued that they were creating jobs, but they're really not. They were creating diseases and death for them. And also, they knew that the minority groups lacked political power influence in their area. And also, there's another example where there's undesirable land desires when it comes to extreme weather, such as the Hurricane Katrina, where due to the historical zoning in New Orleans, black, mainly the black communities are usually placed in lower elevations. So when Hurricane Katrina hit, it hit them hard, and they were mainly affected by it, while the wider and wealthier communities were mainly put in high elevations, making it resilient to weather um, extremes events. One of the major issues is the lack of resources in minority communities. The wealthier communities can afford more desirable and lands, while the minority communities or the low incomes cannot afford um, better land, and they're stuck into undesirable land where they're at risk of environmental issues. In conclusion, the Flint water crisis, the Cancer Alley, the Hurricane Katrina, and even the COVID pandemic has so many similarities and lessons learned when it comes to environmental racism. As you can see today, COVID mostly are the people who are mostly affected by COVID are colored communities. There is a lack of public infrastructure, there's a disrespect of science, and there's a lack of regulations and people of color to keep a lack of regulation to keep like everyone safe, all people safe. And this is a fight for human rights mainly. And there's so much we can do within our community, such as voting, holding elected like officials, joining nonprofits to fight for this. According to Michigan sociologists, they encourage to seek promoting ideas and methods concerning this issue, encourage development and also collaboration to bring public awareness to the issue. But this change starts within us. Thank you.